Welcome back to another episode of Late Hits. I'm your host, Reed Napper. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our guest today is the one and only Jake of College Football Red Zone, my co-host of College Football Red Zone Live. My friend, how are we doing?
Hey, listen, it feels good to finally step in the bastions of the cathedral that is your college football show. Happy to be here, man.
Yes. Yeah, appreciate it. Finally getting the home and home done. The scheduling has been put off long enough. We finally have come to an agreement on a date and a
We
time,
we found
and
we
we are
finally
kicking
found
off.
a non-conference slot that
Yes.
was opened up.
Yes, it's only coming week 4, but we finally made it work. So on the program this evening, we're going to be talking about our group of 5 contenders. We're going to be going through each group of 5 conference. I guess technically now the G6, now that the Pac-12 is finally back and alive. So we'll be going through each conference, giving our thoughts on some of the contenders in each conference, and potentially who's going to be contending for that playoff spot, that 12 seed. Or maybe higher in the college football playoffs. Starting with the American Conference, arguably the most contending, the highly contending conference in the G6. Just based on my power rankings, there are 8 teams compiled in the top 86. So I mean, 66 to 80 to 86. There's 8 teams. So I mean, it's a highly competitive conference, especially as we've seen over the last few seasons. They've been right in that conversation for the G6 position. So, Jake, as the guest of the program, I will start with you. Who do you think is your initial thought, the initial pick for the American?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go in a slightly different direction in terms of a program that's falling under the radar a little bit just because of how they did the last couple of seasons. So if I had to pick a champion for the American today, I'm actually rolling with the Roadrunners. I really
Mm,
like how their schedule rolls out. Able to get USF at home. They have Tulane, but Tulane, is coached under Will Hall. I think Jim Taylor has an advantage in terms of going up against them. You also got North Texas, Tulsa, UAB, Navy at home as well. And as you may know, UTSA, very good in the Alamo Dome historically. If they can find a way to win consistently on the road, I actually think that this program, which has silently been one of the best programs in the G6 as of recently, I think UTSA can win their first ever American Conference title. And to take it a step further, I think who they're going to go up against in the conference championship game, I'm leaning on Army. I think Army's got some
mm.
continuity, and I really like how their schedule lines up this fall. I think Army is going to be that team that's going to also be in that American title game to go on top of that.
I don't hate the UTSA shot. I think they've been one of the standouts in the American over the past few seasons. I think they've just missed a couple pieces to really get over the edge. I think their continuity, as you pointed out, I think their schedule really falls out well for them. My pick in the American right now, and I've talked about him on the show before with you, and it's South Florida. I'm buying all the hype with Brian Hartline at the helm. I think the Bulls are setting themselves up for, a potentially, I'm not going to say dynasty because it's a little early to call it that with Brian Hartline at the helm, but I think just the impact that the portal class that they're having, that they're bringing in, I think is going to have an immediate impact. Van Buren coming in at quarterback, I think he's going to be a game changer in this American Conference. Kenny Odom, still a wide receiver, coming over from UTEP, nearly 600-yard receiver. So I think they're going to have some players to work around with on the offensive side. I'm really excited mainly about the defense. CJ Hicks is the standout defensively for me, coming over from Ohio State, and also Asani Redwood at D tackle from West Virginia. I think those are going to be the two standouts defensively for South Florida. I project them to win the conference as of right now. I have them, potentially going 9-3, upwards of 10-2, maybe, just depending on how the conference shakes out. But again, it's only the start of April, so we still have a lot of projecting to do. Competing with them near the top, I also have UTSA kind of around that 8-4, 9-3 range. I also have Memphis up there. I didn't know what your thoughts on Memphis were with Charles Huff taking over for the Tigers, but I mean, it's easily a plug and play with Memphis as well, bringing over a lot of the Southern Miss talent that he had there.
Yeah, and I think Memphis is going to be good this year. I think Memphis is going to have something to say as we get in deeper into October and into November as well. The thing that I hesitate a little bit more, and you kind of touched on this already, bringing a lot of those players from Southern Miss. So Southern Miss was in contention for the Sun Belt title. I think they were sitting at 7-2 at one point, and then they ended
Yeah.
up losing their last 3 games. So, the fact that they finished the regular season the way that they did in, let's just call a spade here, a little bit of an inferior conference at this point in time, I have a little bit of pause in terms of that automatically translating into Memphis taking that next step. I think it's going to be a good year, but I don't know if it's going to be a great year necessarily. Although I do think that they're going to certainly be in contention to, win the American. I think they're going to be in that top 3 or 4 teams. I just think they're going to take one too many losses, and I think 2 losses is going to be enough to keep yourself out of the title game this year.
I completely agree. It's a logjam at the top between basically all the teams we just talked about. Army is kind of a shock to me personally. I would not have. I mean, I completely agree. Their roster continuity is pretty. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that when I was looking at the American just holistically here. Like they're returning production. They're 74th in the country returning production. So I mean, that's good to at least have some continuity there in that roster, and especially for a service academy, they can't dive into the portal like their competition. So I think that's definitely important to have.
Yeah, and I think it also helps for Army, and it's a little bit of a scheduling quirk for them because they technically have the Army Navy game at the end of the year. They're not going to play Navy in conference play. They're not going to play each other twice in, I guess, what's technically the regular season, right? So being able to avoid what could be, at least for me, the highest power rated team in the American straight away definitely helps with that. And then even some of the tougher games that they have, East Carolina, Tulane, USF, those games are all going to be at home. The road games are in conference play are Tulsa. They got Memphis, which that will be a tough one. That is one game that I could see Army losing in conference play. And then also looking at Rice, we're talking about food, and then we got Temple to round things out in terms of your road games. And Casey Keeler still has some things to prove. So the road games are navigable. You have your tougher games tend to be at home. I like the split for Army, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Let's go down to the Fun Belt, Jake. And this is a conference that has been run by James Madison over the past few seasons, but I have a feeling, knowing you as I do, I have a feeling that there could be someone potentially knocking on the door to take that conference championship.
I sat there and thought about it, but I looked at the Sun Belt. So how last year we had James Madison and Troy meet up in the Sun Belt championship game, and it was a really competitive game. It was a 4-quarter game. Troy gave it everything that they had, but James Madison just turned out to be a little bit too much. They ended up winning the Sun Belt, and they ended up being one of the secondary representatives on behalf of the G5 to make the college football playoff. You're going to ask yourself, is this a replay from last year when the game goes live? Because I actually have the same exact conference championship game this year. I really am high on Sun Belt Billy being back in his element and being back in a place where they have more resources compared to many of their conference peers, and it's still one of the best programs in the country. So I know they took some losses in the transfer portal, as is for any really good G6 program, but I think there's still a lot of talent here, and I like how the conference schedule shakes up for James Madison to get back and to host the Sun Belt title. And then representing that West Division, Troy is still really good, man. And that Troy football team is going to be a fun team to watch. I am still rolling with Troy to win the West, although keep an eye out for the Raging Cajuns. They had some injury luck last year that did not go their way. Had some guys that weren't expected to play that were probably going to start next year, play last season. I think that's going to really provide dividends for the Raging Cajuns. So there's a little bit of a sleeper pick as well. But for right now, I mean, I'm projecting what we had last year. I think we're going to see the same thing again.
I don't doubt that. I could totally see it. I think one team that's going to be a part of that conversation, I'm not overlooking Marshall. I think Marshall could potentially be in that conversation. I think their returning production, they lead the conference in returning production, actually. 88th in return production rating, and they lead the conference in returning snaps. So, or actually second in the conference in returning snaps. So I think that is going to play dividends to them. They also get a pretty solid just based on the SP plus rankings from Bill Connolly, the 54th, which is the highest in the conference for offensive SP plus. I think that's a huge metric to go by. They're rebounding from Charles Huff leaving the program a few years ago, and I think they exceeded expectations a little bit last year. Everyone kind of put them down at, like in the bottom feeder category. So I think Marshall is definitely going to be back in that conversation again this year. Whereas a few seasons ago they were on the cusp of a conference championship appearance.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of conference championship appearance, Marshall literally won the Sun Belt a few years ago under Charles Huff. That was a
Yeah,
real thing that happened with my very own eyes. And I agree with you there as well. I think they definitely exceeded expectations. I full disclosure, I thought they were going to be booty cheeks, right? They lost a ton of talent, with Charles Huff taking a lot of his key guys and bringing them over to Southern Miss at the time, and a lot of what they brought in, and no problem with bringing in like a few players from the FCS ranks, but a lot of what they brought in was FCS or non-Division One players. So I
yeah.
was really concerned with the number of transfers from those ranks coming to be a part of your FBS team, just to kind of fill out the roster with veterans instead of essentially doing like an all freshman challenge instead. But hey, I got to give Tony Gibson credit. He did a pretty good job. He's got a couple of key returners coming back as well. I think that Marshall is a team I have going 8-4, but I think there's absolutely a ceiling where they can win a couple more games, win double-digit games, really outside of the Penn State game, and I would even say maybe the James Madison game on the road,
Yeah.
where it would be a hard sell for me to say that they win these games, but all the other games besides those two, I think are certainly winnable games. And for me, it's one of the safer picks, at least in terms of if I had to bet on a certain team to go to a bowl game, I think even the worst case scenario, I think Marshall is at least participating in bowl season.
To your initial point of James Madison, I think I have to see it to believe it. They've dominated this conference for a few years now, so I think I just have to see it to believe it. Them, losing that title for sure. I think I just don't believe that any team can stack up to James Madison right now. And I'm also a believer in Sunbelt Billy. I think that's a
Yeah.
great fit for him. I think it's a great bounce back spot from what did go down at Florida. Didn't have the best success, and he's back in the conference that he's very familiar with in that competition level. So I think it's just a great fit overall in the long term for sure. For now, to the rejuvenated, our glorious king, the Pac-12. It's back. Late night Pac-12 is finally back. They come back with the additions of Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Texas State, Washington State, and Oregon State stay in the conference, as well as Utah State and Colorado State joining. All of those teams, except for Texas State, come from the Mountain West. So, Jake, again, I'm gonna kick it over to you first. I think this is. I mean, I'm not going to say it's totally cookie cutter because I think there are potentially two teams behind the likes of Boise State that nationally is going to get the recognition of being probably the main contender in this conference. But again, knowing you, I think there are a few teams that could come up and make a run for it.
I think even though that this conference has only been back around in its current state for 5 minutes, I think what we can say that I think just looking at what I've done in my personal research, I think the Pac-12 is going to be the best conference in the G6, top to bottom. And I really look at it from a strength of schedule standpoint. I'm still waiting on what the CUSA is going to be because they had the audacity to put out a conference schedule with Louisiana Tech on it. Just complete absurdity. Just a pathetic league office, to be honest with you. Pushing that out 11:30 at night, like just the equivalent of like sending the "Hey you up" text. Just complete desperation. Anyways, let me get back to the Pac-12 for a quick second here and why I think this conference is going to be really good. So the top 8 of the 9 top schedules in the G6 from a strength perspective are in the Pac-12. The Rice Owls are the only team that kind of like squeeze into a couple of these teams in the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some good competition. There's no clear-cut bottom. I'll say that. But at the top, it's a little bit of a different story. I would be truly shocked if somebody other than Boise State wins it. I just think Boise State is just head and shoulders above these other programs in the Pac-12 right now. For me, the real question is going to be who's going to be playing against Boise State in the Pac-12 title game. I would be willing to say I think San Diego State is going to be the one. It's going to come down to them and Fresno State, and the Aztecs do have the benefit of playing Fresno State at home because that flex game at the end of the year, that does not count as a conference game. It counts as a non-conference entity.
Yeah.
So, and that probably helps with that strength of schedule too, but it is what it is. But I think San Diego State is that team. Sean Lewis is an offensive-minded guy. They did lose some pieces on the defense side of the ball, but I actually think that they got a little bit better given that they returned Lucky Sutton and Son Staley. I think the Aztecs would be the team that would challenge Boise State directly when it comes to that Pac-12 title game.
That was exactly the team I was going to point out to be a contender against Boise State. San Diego State, I think, definitely has the most going for them right now. I know they lost a couple of key players to the portal and also their defensive coordinator this past season, but I mean, they returned their starting quarterback, Jaden Denengal. He is back. Lucky Sutton is back at running back. He was nearly a 1,300-yard rusher from last season and 10 touchdowns. So I think having that main continuity in the backfield is a huge plus. They do add a handful of offensive linemen through the portal. So we'll have to get reports out of spring ball to see how the continuity there is going. But I think San Diego State, maybe even Fresno State, to your point, could be an outside contender to be who's playing against Boise State. But again, I think Boise State is head and shoulders above the rest of this conference. San Diego State, I think, just has the best chance of being in that title game.
Be based on the home venue of the highest seeded team. So whoever has the top overall record, they get the host. And then whoever happens to be that second place team that the Pac-12 decides it to be, that they have to have the opportunity to travel to the higher seeded team's side. So I did a discount double check. That's how that's going to play out. No neutral site shenanigans.
Pulled up my initial record predictions for the Pac-12. I have them. Their only conference loss I have is to Boise State. I have them literally winning every other conference game on their schedule right now.
Yeah, and that's what I got for San Diego State too. So I think it's going to be a rematch. It regardless is going to be a rematch in the Pac-12 title game because they all play each other just how God intended.
Another conference that is relatively all in the same region except for the one outlier, the newcomer to the conference, the MAC, the staple that is late night MACtion, midweek MACtion. Talked about it on your program before, but I think there's really two teams that are going to be standing out above the rest here. When we were initially doing our power rankings, I know we had the same team at the top. I don't want to spoil it in case viewers of this show did not catch that episode. It will be linked down in the description below. So make sure to go check out the live show Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. But we did have the same team at the top of our power rankings, so I'm not going to spoil it. But Jake, I feel like they're really the team. It's really two teams at the top, I think, that are gonna run this conference.
You're not gonna believe this, but I actually adjusted my my rankings a little bit. You
switched it up on me.
I had a coming to Jesus moment about a few teams here, right? Because I was talking about it on the live stream initially, and as I was talking about it, I was looking back, I was like, man, I think I really like this team more than like a couple of teams that I actually ranked ahead of it initially. So this team I didn't originally have in my top two, but when I looked at them, they're going to win the damn thing. It's Miami Redhawks, baby. I really love this football team. And I think this team is so good. I know that the quarterback position is going to be a little bit of a question mark. As long as the quarterback is a starting caliber quarterback in the G5, Miami is going to be really good. They bring Eric Smith back. They have arguably the best coach in this conference in Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin, true. I'm saying that as a Cincinnati guy. That is our rival. Okay. Do you understand how high I have to be to talk nice about little brother? Okay. I just need the people to understand that from that perspective. Like, best coach in the conference, Chuck Martin. Really, arguably the best program in this conference. I would say that's a better program right now than Toledo for sure. And they added more in the transfer portal than what they lost. The Adam Trick loss, that's going to be That's a star. That's
Yes.
going to Texas Tech, and that's going to be tough to replace. But even then, I still think I look at this football team. Their offensive line, they brought in multiple offensive line pieces. Like I think they're going to be really good in the line of scrimmage with those transfer portal pieces, and then Eric Smith coming back, who's an all-conference left tackle, I believe. On top of a Rodney Nelson, comes from Monmouth, 2,000 total yards. You know how hard it is to put up 2,000 yards? That is some RTG numbers, brother. So I look at Miami going to Detroit, and I think they're going to win the thing. And another little bit of a surprise in terms of who's going to be there as well. Ohio Bobcats. They come to Detroit as well. This is more me believing in their program. This Ohio team is not going to be the same team as what it was, 3 or even last year under Parker Navarro. But I just really believe in John Husser, the way he was able to focus that team after all the shenanigans that happened in that internally with their coach being fired because of professional misconduct, so to speak. And then going out and beating UNLV, a really good G5 program. I'm high on John Husser. So even though they're losing, a Chase Hendricks, who's a stud, they're losing to Jalen Thompson, they're losing to Jordan James and a Jay Crable. They're losing all of those guys, all conference players / potential breakout guys. I'm giving Ohio enough benefit of the doubt here to say I think John Husser is going to do an incredible job. I think he goes 9-3 this year. I think they lose just one game in conference play, and that is to, ironically enough, Miami. I think the Ohio Bobcats will take on the Red Hawks in Detroit this fall. At least how I see things in April.
I totally don't disagree. I have Miami right there at the top as well. I think a team that is kind of, I mean, we talked about them a lot. Is Western Michigan. I feel like they're returning the two arguably most important players on the football field. They're returning their starting quarterback and starting running back. Jalen Buckley in the backfield was a monster for them last season, just over 1,000 yards rushing. Just solely based off that bowl game alone. I know I've talked about it. I was absolutely mesmerized by his performance in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And then Brock Lowry coming back at quarterback, nearly 1,000-yard rusher at quarterback, 14 touchdowns. I feel like, and they run, and just the offense that they run as well, getting the quarterback involved in the run game as well, I think it plays a huge part into how successful this team is. The main question for me, though, is on the defensive side. I feel like their defense took a huge hit from where it was last season. It's not going to be the same names and faces that you were watching for Western Michigan last season. Scoop Gardner is probably the biggest name returning on the defensive line. Linebacker room does return some production in Dylan Moore and Dominic Moon, but their secondary is probably returns the most production from last season. So mainly that defensive front is where I'm looking out for from last season. Not a whole ton of production aside from Garner and DeJuan Eccles on that defensive front from Western Michigan. That's my biggest question mark as of right now. But just those two players I mentioned at the top, I can't overlook them. I think having a returning quarterback and running back goes a long way in this current landscape of college football. So I have Western Michigan right there at the top, but Miami of Ohio I also have at the top. I think that their roster top to bottom is probably the best on paper right now. It's just if that quarterback position pans out exactly like you talked about.
And I thought about Western Michigan too, because we were hyping them up quite a bit. And then I dug a little bit deeper. Historically, the historically is not on Western Michigan side because we haven't seen a repeat champion in such an incredibly long time. And that's primarily because we do see a lot of the teams in this conference relatively the same in resources. There's less of a discrepancy than really anywhere else in college football. So it really is like cream rises to the top type of situation. Yeah. So I think Western Michigan is a top 2 team just purely from a roster talent perspective. But at the same time, I think there's going to be a couple of wonky upsets that we're not going to initially expect that are going to happen, that are going to ultimately keep the Broncos out of the title game.
Now, a conference that is completely wacky, and you mentioned, you prefaced on it earlier, Jake, the Conference USA. We have no idea what their schedule is because they haven't announced it. We have no
No,
we
they,
have no
they
idea.
announced it. It was while we were sleeping, bro.
Yeah, that's the point. didn't even know it happened. That's my thing. So
What?
I mean, there's one team to me that stands head and shoulders above the rest. I'm not sure about you, but uh I know on Twitter this fan base has gotten at me a little bit, mainly because of how I view them. But uh I'm not sure what you think, Jake, but I think we're gonna be aligned here once again.
I'm looking at Western Kentucky this year in terms of winning the like the Conference USA,
Yeah.
and I have them in a little bit of a tier of their own in terms of who I think is going to possibly finish in second. That's going to be a little bit more of an interesting conversation for me. Whether it's like a Kennesaw State, they have an incredible coaching staff. They did lose some talent, losing Amari Odom, for example. That's a really tough loss. Jacksonville State, they were also very close to winning the Conference USA and been one of the better programs in the G6 since they've joined the FBS just a few years ago. Well, they need to figure out how to replace Camp Cook. And then another team that the model, for my personal model, was pretty high on is Liberty. They are the model is believing in Liberty. Once again, it is not believing in Liberty nearly as much as what it did last year, where famously, at least on my channel, in last July, I had Liberty as my college football playoff participant. Okay, you know damn well how that ended up working out for me. Ready to believe fully in Jamie Chadwell, because it just seems like ever since he took over that program, it's just been a steady decline, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to turn it around again and regain some momentum. On paper, they should have a top 2 roster. I just don't know if I have a ton of faith in Jamie Chadwell. So we'll have to wait on see on them. If I had to pick a team, I think Delaware would be a sneaky good pick. They might have the best quarterback in this conference.
Crazy for me because they're currently ranked, what is that, 6th in the conference based on my model, and exactly your point, they might have the best quarterback in the conference. So Western Kentucky I do have up there. I actually my model projects them 3rd. It actually has Liberty 1 spot above them in the national rank and the conference rank. I have Jack State at the top. I think a lot of this has to do with their returning production. They returned the 47th best returning production and then the 50th best returning snaps. So I think that has a huge part to play in it. They're also up there in the overall SP plus rankings as well. I think that also has a big part to go into the model's thoughts. But I think Jack State being right on the cusp of it last season, I think that's gonna play a big part into their motivation going into this season. They returned Caden Creel at quarterback. They do bring in a new offensive coordinator. Taylor Houseweight comes in as the new offensive coordinator, but they do return 14 starters on that side of the ball. So I think that's going to be a huge spark to this team going into next season. And my model currently projects Jack State, to be contending for that Conference USA title. But I mean, there's a handful of teams right there at the top. I mean, Kennesaw State won the damn thing last year, and they're currently projected to be 5th in my model. So I think that this is easily going to be one of the most competitive conferences in the G6, top, or at least top to middle. I would say there's a few teams there at the bottom. They are going to be there.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams at the bottom, which I've already revealed in my personal rankings on Twitter and YouTube, that not only are going to be in the bottom, but they are legitimate bottom 5 programs in the country going into this season and have a lot more to prove. Like, you want to talk about just pure poverty work. Sam Houston in Mid Tennessee State might be the closest thing to poverty that we see. Not UMass, how UMass was last year, but it might be rough. I'm not going to lie. Definitely hear what you're saying. I mean, Jacksonville State, they got a ton of returning players that are all conference guys. I just raised that with Nick Minicucci, baby.
AT's gonna love that.
No,
AT's gonna love that. It's again Jake's breakdown of all 138 teams here in the spring will be linked down below. He's doing it on Twitter and YouTube. So you can get the best of both worlds. You can get the visual and you can get the audio breakdown from him. So I have Middle Tennessee State as the worst team in college football at this current moment. So them, Sam Houston, I think Missouri State also takes a dip just solely because of that turnover at a head coach.
Yeah,
So
and we talked about it. We both on air and like off the air, big Ryan
yeah,
Beard guys. So
yes,
so
we
that's
love
a
Ryan
big part
Beard.
of it. Not that like Casey Woods is a like he's not going to do a good job. I think he's going to do fine at Missouri State if he's
Yeah.
especially if he's given enough time. Is just there's levels to it. I really like what Ryan Beard did, and I'm hoping he does well at Coastal Carolina.
Yes, for sure. We both hope that. The last G6 conference, not the worst, but certainly not the best. The Mountain West. I project one team to be, I wouldn't say head and shoulders above, but it's a clear cut, team I have at the top, Jake. I have the New Mexico Lobos at the top. I think they're the team to beat in this conference, at least based on the model. They returned the most production in the conference by a clear margin. They're the 21st ranked team in returning production. They also benefit from the highest rated SP plus team in the conference. So I think New Mexico. I think New Mexico is the team to beat this year in the Mountain West.
It was interesting that you mentioned that. You probably saw from my reaction. I actually did
Yeah.
not have New Mexico in my conference championship game, so I unsurprisingly looked in a different direction. So this particular
Okay.
team, not only did I think could win the Mountain West, I actually think there is an outside shot for them to go to the college football playoff. As long as there is some like a little bit more chaos in the rest of the country, I have UNLV going
Yeah.
to unironically enough, like staying in Vegas and winning the Mountain West title. I think they can go undefeated in conference play, and I actually think there's an outside shot they go undefeated because their toughest game that they have on their schedule right now, they have a home game against Cal. Now, we think that's going to be an incredibly fun game. We know Cal's going to put up a lot of points. UNLV, we saw them put up a lot of points. That is the hallmark of a Dan Mullen football team. Lots of points are going to be scored in that game. It might come down to who just happens to have the ball last. But if UNLV can find a way to win that game at home, will probably be like a 10:30 kickoff or something like that. I mean, look out. That might be the toughest game that they have. They do have New Mexico on the road, but I actually trust UNLV's program enough to go on the road at this point and to take down the New Mexico Lobos because historically, we seen it last year. It was a great year last year for the Lobos. It is that lightning in the bottle because historically the Lobos haven't been like the best of programs. They've historically been well, to put it nicely, a team that is typically used for popular rebuilds in NCAA 14 or like EA college football prior to last year. Another team that I'm really eyeing though, Hawaii, man. It's just hard for me to pick against Micah Awahata. Dude is a stud.
Yep.
Timmy Chang, stud.
To be fully transparent, I do have a Heisman ticket in on Mike Awahata. I think.
Okay.
I mean, I have one on him and Sagapoltel. I think the Samoan lefties, dude. It's something about him.
Stanford found it out the hard way.
I had to do it. I mean, my model projects New Mexico to win every game except their trip to Oklahoma in week 3.
Yeah,
an 11-1 football team.
I could definitely see that.
We haven't even mentioned the newcomer to the conference, North Dakota State. I think could be an immediate contender in this conference. I don't know about you. I think North Dakota State is definitely going to be in this conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I looked at North Dakota State, like that's certainly a team that's good enough to compete with the big boys in this conference. Whether it's like, I would say there's a big 4: Hawaii, North Dakota State, New Mexico, and UNLV. I think after that, like there's a team in its own tier. I think it's Air Force in its own tier. I think Air Force can sneak up on some people. Sneaky good head coach in Tony Calhoun. And then I think after that, it's really your bottom tier, your San Jose, your NIU, UTEP, which by the way, welcome from CUSA.
Definitely that Jack State game in week 0 is definitely that's gonna be a good litmus test for us. How is North Dakota State gonna fare at a similar competition level for sure. I mean, shoot, you saw the model's thoughts on that matchup in week 0. They had North Dakota State as a 9-point favorite.
And you
which,
know what's
which is
crazy is that like your model was generous compared to mine. I have it as a 12.5 point favorite. I think the Bison wins by a couple of touchdowns. They're that
jeez.
good. They ain't playing around this year, man.
That'll do it for this episode of Late Hits. I appreciate you tuning in to this episode. Make sure to go follow Jake on all his socials. They'll be down below. Go subscribe to the YouTube. This man just hit 200 subscribers over on YouTube. So congrats to him on that once again. Jake, any last words for the people?
And just glad that I can hop on your show and we can just talk ball, man. You know, it's always like a pleasure to like to chat up with you.
For sure. I appreciate it. Mr. G6 himself, Jake. Appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next episode. Have a good evening.